My name is Angela Mumbinjage, and I'll be a moderator for this powerful panel that we're talking about biophilic design, touching on innovations in architecture and interior spaces. So today, we gather to explore something quite powerful, not just how we build, but how we feel in the spaces we create. Biophilic design is more than just greenery to a room. It's about reconnecting people with nature through architecture, planning, and design, and ultimately improving well-being, creativity, and environmental impact. Now, to help us reimagine the spaces we live, work, and gather in, I'm thrilled to introduce three brilliant minds who are not only designing, and the third one is actually on the way, so I hope Victor is on the way, only designing with nature in mind, but with humanity at heart. Each one brings a unique lens to this biophilic conversation. So together with three incredible experts, we'll unpack innovations happening at every level. And this is from interior textures to entire city frameworks, from creative low budget hacks to high ROI investments, from ancestral wisdom to regenerative futures. So let's meet the voices guiding this conversation. So let's begin our biophilic journey with someone who is very passionate for nature-led design, has traveled far and beyond borders, and today beams in virtually from across the globe. Nuria, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good
Yes.
morning, and thank you for inviting me here. I would say Asanta Sana na Asabuhi Nyema. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yes, you are. So, Nuria, let's start with you. As someone who teaches biophilia across the world, how would you define biophilia design beyond just adding plants?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, I have a great presentation to walk you through this answer. So I hope that you can have 10 minutes to listen to this answer. I'm going to share my screen and I hope people can see that. Okay, so I will start. I want to thank you all for inviting me to this conference, first of all, and thank you for my sister, Wang Wei, for creating this amazing conference around blending African heritage and biophilia for a regenerative future. I'm Nuria Muñoz, the founder of Habitarmonia and Habitarmonia Academy, and I'm a catalyst for transformation, designing experiences, weaving biophilic futures, and nurturing a global platform for nature-connected living. Habitarmonia is more than just a design studio. It's a living ecosystem, a space where consulting, education, and creative practice converge to reconnect people, place, and purpose. And my work is rooted in the belief that design is not just about shaping spaces, it's about shaping life. It's a powerful tool for healing, regeneration, and remembering who we truly are in relationship with the earth. And through Habitarmonia, I have dedicated myself to sharing knowledge, nurturing community, and inspiring a new paradigm of design, one that honors nature's intelligence, awakens the senses, and invites us to co-create environments that uplift, restore, and belong. Welcome to a space where design listens, breathes, and transforms. Welcome to Designing for Life. And my question to all of you for later is, what if our spaces helped us not just survive, but thrive? Biophilic design is a doorway into deeper presence, healing, and wholeness. And today I invite you to look beyond plans and patterns and into the soul of what it means to design with life. To begin, let's understand what biophilic design truly is. Biophilic design is about remembering that we are nature, not separate from it. It means creating spaces that support our physiology, regulate our nervous system, and reconnect us with beauty and meaning. And it asks questions such as what helps the body feel grounded and safe? What awakens curiosity, joy, and reverence? The old paradigm asks, as you know, how much does it cost? How quickly can we build it? But the most powerful question we can ask is, how will this space make people feel? What rhythms support this community? What would it mean to design with dignity, not just efficiency? What kind of world are we shaping? These are not just design questions, my friends. They are cultural questions, relational questions. And from here, let's step into the true power of biophilic design, its ripple effect. This is the heart of my talk, because this is the heart of design that heals. When we design with nature, we activate a living system of interconnected benefits. Let's begin at the center with measurable outcomes. For example, you know that 10 minutes in a biophilic space reduces cortisol by 12%. Hospital patients with natural views heal 8.5% faster. Daily natural material workplaces boost productivity up to 15%. Green areas foster trust and empathy. And yet, these outcomes don't live alone. They feed something deeper. They ripple outward and begin to touch every part of who we are, what we call the 8 dimensions of wellness or well-being. Emotional well-being is nourished when a space brings calm to the nervous system. Physical wellness is supported through better sleep, stronger immunity, and less illness. Social wellness flourishes when design encourages connection. Spiritual wellness is often forgotten in our field, but when a space awakens awe, when it reconnects us to the rhythms of the earth, to beauty, to something greater, it becomes sacred. Occupational well-being means that our work environments don't just drain us, but support us with better air, with better light, acoustics, and sensory engagement. People feel more focused and more creative. How about intellectual wellness? This is sparked with curiosity. Design can invite us to think, to wonder, to explore. Environmental wellness is about reciprocity. It's not just how the space affects us, but how it impacts the planet. And finally, financial wellness, because care-based design is not just morally right, it's economically sound. Healthier spaces reduce costs over time, increases satisfaction, and create real long-term value. This is not linear cause and effect. It is a living web. And the more care we bring into the center, the more life radiates outward. So, how do we measure value within this living system? Let's move into that question. Let's pause and ask ourselves, how do we define value? For too long, we've measured success by speed, by square meters, or return on investment in narrow terms. But what if we changed the metric? What if value was measured by peace, by the feeling of coming home to ourselves, by the health and happiness of the people who inhabit our spaces? A biophilic space might cost a little more at first, but over time, it pays back in reduced stress, better health, fewer sick days, and more joy. Care is not a soft value, it's a strategic one. And when we design from care, we generate something far more enduring than profit. We generate belonging, beauty, and resilience. But this shift in value isn't a new idea. In fact, it's ancient. Let's look back and remember that what our ancestors always knew. Long before we had the term biophilic design, our ancestors were already living it across Africa, in Mesopotamia, and among countless indigenous cultures. People built with nature, not against it. They used what was available: earth, straw, wood, even skins. And their homes weren't just shelters. They were ecosystems in harmony with sun cycles, wind flows, animal migrations, and sacred geography. They built earth walls and breathed, courtyards that gather rain, verandas and shaded spaces that honored the rhythm of the day. This was not green design. This was common sense. It was care encoded with the way we lived. We are not inventing something new. We are remembering something wise. So, how do we bring this wisdom into today's world? The answer is we do it together. We do it together. Good design doesn't come from a single expert or trend. It emerges from relationship with the land, with the people, with time, and with intuition. Co-creation means listening to what the land is asking, involving the community from the beginning, trusting the sensory embodied intelligence of those who use the space every day. This is why we created Habitat Harmonia. This is not just a platform and ecosystem, it's a living, breathing space. It brings together practitioners, researchers, designers, and dreamers who believe in design as a tool for healing and transformation. Let me show you what this ecosystem holds. Habitat Harmonia is a place where deep knowledge meets living practice. We offer biophilic and well-being certifications rooted in science, beauty, and embodiment, webinars with world-leading voices from neuroscience to sacred geometry, a community of global professionals designing for well-being, regeneration, and soul. But above all, Habitat Harmonia is a container for remembering that we can build differently, that our work can heal, that design can serve life, not just function. So let me leave you with the words that carry the soul of this entire journey. This is why I do this work, because every space we shape also shapes us. We're not just creating environments for nothing. We are shaping possibilities for healing, for connection, for dignity, for joy. Let's reclaim design as a sacred practice rooted in reverence and responsibility. This is not the end of a presentation, it's the beginning of a remembering, as my sister Wang Wei said, a remembering that we are nature, that we are designers, and that we hold the power to heal through the spaces we shape. I hope this talk has offered you not just new information, but a new way to see and a new way to imagine what's possible. Together, let's design for life. Thank you. Asante San.
Let's appreciate Miss Nuria. Miss Nuria, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. A couple of things that we've learned, especially when you've told us about habitamonia. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And I'll be engaging you on the same, and also just to understand how you help clients to calculate a return of nature. So ladies and gentlemen, please let's appreciate Miss Nuria once again. So from the virtual, so from the virtual to the vibrant African cityscapes, our next panelist ensures biophilia shows up in planning codes, construction sites, and community hubs. Watetu Gachoki is our next speaker. And just before I actually let her speak, interestingly, we've just realized that she comes from my village. So I want to understand what inspired her to get into this biophilia space. So Watetu Gachoki, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. We are girls from Kirinyaga. So I want to start by asking everyone in this sitting. We all participated in the 10K steps. It had a way in earlier this year, right? And I want someone to share where they used to achieve these 10K steps. Like where would you go? How did you used to achieve these 10K steps? So randomly, someone just pass a mic around and tell us. I don't know whether it's someone to do that. However, I think I can just do it. So I just want us to learn. Did you ever achieve 10K steps?
No.
Who participated in the 10K steps? Yeah.
In Karura.
Where do you live?
In Buruburu.
Someone else? One more person? Thank you.
Yes, Karura. Membli.
I think from Buruburu to Karura will take you 30, 40 minutes. Yeah, when there's no traffic. When there's traffic, it's 1 hour. Membli to Karura, still 30 minutes, assuming that you use the bypass. Personally, I used to struggle with the 10K step because I don't live next to an open space. I live in Ruiru. And I don't see myself driving from Ruiru to Karura. Because why should I? As an urban planner, that is my major role. I'm supposed to allocate land uses and land spaces and ensure that I provide spaces for people to integrate. I shouldn't be covering a 30, 40 minutes, 1 hour drive to access an open area. All of us have used the road on a Sunday, right? What happens at the roundabouts, the spaces that are at the roundabout, it's full of people. What are these people doing there? They are sleeping, resting, chatting. What does this tell you? That in Kenya, as it is right now, there's need for us to plan for spaces where people interact. And not just spaces, but spaces that people interact with nature. And I want to come from work, Nairobi, the chaos of Nairobi, and walk in a silent, place full of trees. So for me, the 10K challenge found me in Europe. The only good thing about Europe is every 3-4 blocks of neighborhood, you find an open space. It can be a small one, but there's an open space. And I was wondering, I was so stressed that coming back to Kenya, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be the last person on this team. You know that 10K step they used to compete who achieves the 10K plus. So I was sure when I came back to Ruiru, I will not achieve the 10K steps. To date, I've not achieved the 10K steps. And we are failing as urban planners, or we are failing as the governance. Our governance structure is also failing us because we are encouraging development without thinking about the people. We are not prioritizing what the people need. If you're trying to cross the roads in Nairobi, you can barely walk. I saw, is it tomorrow where there's a walk from Kenyatta to Nairobi to they are trying to, what is there tomorrow? There's an urban walk, something to, yeah. But I wondered, how are they going to walk from Kenyatta to town? Well, I know I can barely find a pavement that I will feel safe to walk in. So these are some of the issues that we have in the urban planning sector, and this is where I develop my passion. I am always sick of seeing the 50 by 100s. Please forgive me if you have one. Because we are busy subdividing land without prior planning to it. So every time as a planner, every time someone is calling me to their project, I'm trying to now put bandages on wounds that have already taken place. And the only way for us to be able to initiate planning before anything else that comes is for us to be able to speak out. And Angela asked me, what is the passion that is driving me towards such conversations? As a sustainability expert, it's because I see that in 10, 20 years from now, we will barely be able to work in Nairobi. We'll have serious water shortages. Right now, there are so many people drilling boreholes with no care of how many meters. By law, there's supposed to be a certain well or distance between one borehole to another, but we all know what is happening on ground. So how do we ensure that we don't get, how do we mitigate these issues? And it is for us to start changing our mindset. By changing our mindset means we as the people are the ones, the power is in us. Unfortunately, we cannot separate planning and politics. But we as the people have more voice. If we come together and decide we want some change, we need to push our leaders into having the right urban planners sorry, I have a call that has interrupted my flow of, yeah. So we need to champion that. Let there be people-minded cities. Let there be roads that have trees. You've all seen what has happened on the expressway and the birds and what kind of, and I've seen Riru, they've all cut the trees down. People just can't do things without minding things. So as an urban planner, my main role is to ensure we have a voice on sustainability. And when someone asks me what do we look at when you're doing sustainability, when you're doing green buildings, we look at 3 things, but majorly we have other things. So we will want to see how we are achieving water efficiency, how we are achieving energy efficiency, and the building materials. But as we've learned from our predecessors, we as Africans have been practicing green materials. But someone came and said we need to build modern houses. But so that is the major role of urban planning and why I'm passionate about this. And from a Kirinyaga perspective, as a village girl, I just want to see green things. And I want to connect with nature and hope that my city can provide that. Thank you.
Amazing. Let's appreciate Watetu Gachoki. We'll be discussing more about the urban place and where we are, especially as a country. So, ladies and gentlemen, the man who has an eye for beauty and yet a heart of balance. Put your hands together for Mr. Victor Obiero. So, Victor, what does biophilic design look like in practice across everyday spaces like homes, clinic, schools, and when working with especially tight budgets, when you're not dealing with the millions? How is that workable?
I think biophilia is everywhere to begin with. You're not limited. Actually, it's one of the most cheapest component when you're doing interior spaces. For example, you walk around Nairobi, one of the major things that are being sold around pots. When you ask about pots, they're very affordable. Buy a pot, take it to your balcony, living spaces, different types of plants that are available, and you're not limited to ideally plants that are within in the context of you just want it to be an internal space. Our facades, when you go to somewhere like Thika Road, Roysambu, it's a concrete jungle. So there's a lot of building, and I like how my colleague is talking about urban planning. There's a lot of buildings, there are a lot of things that we can actually do. So for example, when you talk about facades, you look at having greenery on the facades, introducing greenery in the interior spaces. Our balconies are not just for storing water. Kenyans, that's what we do. Yeah, we need to actually move away from that, introduce natural lighting. It's just a component. When you are building, we need to introduce things like large windows that bring in light into a space. That is a component of biophilia. It's very affordable. Also, as well, when you look at affordability in terms of biophilic, look at the materials. We tend to promote a lot of imported items and not promote the local artisans. Whereas we need to promote the local artisans because the materials they use to build are locally sourced. So ideally, when you look at the biophilic element of actually having a sustainable and a low budget interiors, you're looking at go to that local artisan, tell them you have this design and you'd want them to design for you. So you're promoting them, you're empowering them, and you're actually giving back to the local community as a way of having a low budget kind of interior spaces. So yes, there is high-end biophilic components in interior spaces, but most of it is very low budgeted. You just have to think outside the box, look at natural lighting, look at the green spaces, look at the materials that you're using for your spaces. Don't go buy curtains that are plastic, woven items. Those are things that are very affordable, that can go well within the space. So these are components that we can actually combine together within an interior space and make a livable, low-budget interior space. Thank you.
Let's appreciate him. So now that we've understand what each panelist does and what they're passionate about, I want us to start answering a couple of questions, and feel free to jump in if you want to add. So the first question, and I want Nuria, if you don't mind, to begin us with this question. So what's the biggest misconception you've encountered about biophilic design? I know you've trained so many people across different cultures, and what are the common myths that you've encountered when it comes to matters biophilic design? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much for this question. This is something which is being addressed in any course or any panel that we're talking about biophilic design. And the major challenge right now that we're seeing is this greenwashing about biophilic design. So people, when they see some plants and some green walls and these natural materials in the space, they think that this is biophilic design. And I want to address this. This is more than that. It's more than just making the space sustainable and creating spaces with plants and with natural light. It's a way to reconnect us with nature. So it's much deeper than just what it's you're seeing. It's much more. It's deeper than that. So what we are seeing all around Europe and around the globe is these two different ways of seeing biophilic design. You have people who are really and truly implementing biophilic design, which is like the gateway to the regenerative way of living and designing. And then you have the people who are just implementing it by just checking the boxes. So things like when we are implementing just plants, this is not biophilic design. So I could go on and on, but that's a very important thing to address here, because this greenwashing of what people think that it's biophilic design, it's harming us. What we are aiming for is that reconnection to Mother Nature, that reconnection to us, and appreciate nature, and not just check the boxes and have a few plants and a few materials which are sustainable materials, and that's it. So that's what we're seeing, and I think that's an important thing to address here.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Nuria. She's talked about greenwashing. She's talked about people thinking that it's just putting a cactus just somewhere in a corner, maybe in your office or in your home. And I'm quite curious, Joan, have you encountered this myth as well, especially in the African context? If you could tell us more about that. Is it alive in the African policy and in construction? If you could take it away.
Yeah, I think greenwashing is now a worldwide crisis. Especially for Africa, since they have apparently realized that they can make a lot of money from it. So if you look at what, and then also in terms of the banking system right now, they want to introduce measures where if your building is not green, then they will give you a higher rate of interest, which will be a good thing for them, for it anyway. But what's this? The downside of it is that we'll just be ticking boxes in terms of our buildings, in terms of our plans, and we'll just only want to bring out, for example, if I do a green building certification for a building, I only look at 3 aspects because there's an app that tells me what I should input and what I should not input. But my client is always left with, what do I do with the waste? What do I do with the solid waste? What more can I do? And you look at this, and also because we are not paying attention, I think the landscape architects will also join in this conversation, on the type of plants we need to plant. So you'll find I might plant something that is not generally having positive impacts on the environment, but an adverse, but it's a plant I don't know. So the greenwashing is there, and it's going to be here to stay. We've planted trees in this country. It has been used, we know how it was used. But yeah, so yeah.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm also curious that, Victor, how have you convinced your clients to tell them to adopt biophilia?
Well, in interior spaces, especially the ones I deal with, commercial interior spaces, this is where you spend most of your time in. So you are 8 to 5, you spend most of the time there with your colleagues. You don't want a flat space. You want a space that actually encourages you to work, encourages you to live there. And actually, one thing that I usually tell my clients is I should look forward to go to my office. Yeah, because it's very important for you to look forward to stay in the office. There was the work from home which was brought in. I was very sterile. People are going back to the office spaces, and the office spaces are also changing. So you need to make it homely, you need to bring in nature, you need to make it one with your surrounding. So it's one way I try and convince our clients to try and include a lot of these components into the interior spaces, so that the workers, the staff coming into the space are able to feel home.
All right, I have a follow-up question. With your observation, what's the rate of receptivity with the Kenyan market?
So I would range it from a low budget commercial space to a high end budget commercial space. The mid range to the high end are highly receptive. The low range are more like very sterile. They just want simple fit outs. Come in, do your MDF, put your furniture and leave. Whereas when you go to the middle level, when you go to the high level, they actually want you to bring in the modularity of the nature aspects. For example, in one of the projects that I did, it's Ford Foundation, I believe it can be able to be displayed. We actually followed the curvature of the building in the space to make it more appealing. So when you look at the curves that we have in nature, it's something that the building borrowed from. And when you implement that into the space, you move away from that sterile type of design where you find that you have boxes within a space, which is very bad looking.
So I have a fun fact. A Harvard study found that offices with strong biophilic design saw higher creativity and cognitive function scores, yet only 11% of commercial buildings globally have integrated nature-based principles in their interior fit-out. Miss Nuria, I don't know whether you're still joining with us. I would love to hear your perspective on this fun fact.
Well, it's actually, there is a long way to go. And as you know, we are here with biophilic design. It's an innovative way, and we see in it as we're early adopters with this philosophy. So in order to adapt more spaces with biophilic design, we need to advocate, we need to educate. And this is, first of all, how do we do that? How do we convince stakeholders to that? I think that it is very important to use science. As you all know, everything that we're talking about biophilic design is science backed up. We're using neuroscience, neuroarchitecture, environmental psychology, anthropology, biology, etc., which is giving us enough data to convince stakeholders about all these benefits that biophilic design has, from cognitive benefits to health benefits to physiological benefits to even environmental benefits and economical benefits. So it's important to give all these benefits and inform about that on a sustained way. Give examples and case studies where people are already succeeding with with biophilic design. And very important as well is showcase these post-occupancy evaluations. So what I mean is that if we are going to create a biophilic design space, we should survey upfront how is everything in that moment, our people feeling in that moment, what is the productivity rates, what are the emotional rates, so all type of surveys. And after that occupancy, after creating that space and people living, working, healing in those spaces, make post-occupancy evaluations in order to showcase to the world the importance of this. So that's where I think that we have a big work to do, to inform about this, to advocate about this, and to educate people about this, and collaborate and co-create and bring them to nature to experience what actually our Mother Nature is and does in terms of health benefits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nuria. Well articulated. And I want to bring the same question locally here in Kenya. She's mentioned that there has to be a lot of collaboration, stakeholder engagement, and also sensitization, because we have a long way to go. I know there are a couple of maybe projects the government has tried. You remember the Michuki Memorial Park. I don't know whether you guys can remember that. There's also Wangari Maathai's legacy, the Green Belt movement. And I have a question also to our urban planner, Watetu Gachoki. If you could tell us also, same question, where are we in Kenya right now when it comes to matters designing spaces?
That's a very hard question because I have to try keep it positive. Well, I might not have a lot of positive things to say. But Michuki Park is a very brilliant concept that has then been amplified by the Nairobi River Regeneration Plan. And I'm sure you've seen year after year, government after government, there's always a budget to clean Nairobi River. Is it ever clean? No. Why? I don't know also. But I think there's a system that we have where the system of intentional failure of projects, so that year after year after year, there's always a budget for something. You know, if they really wanted to do Nairobi River Regeneration Plan, this is something they would have achieved 20 years ago. I was in, and you will look at San Antonio River Regeneration Project. It's in the US, in Texas. And those guys did a river regeneration within a year. They created a space where they were able to connect the city and the river using streets, buildings, every building that is on that river. And it's on the riparian reserve. Let me just say, it's on the riparian reserve, but that building is connected to the river because the river acts as an open space and a medium of interaction for these people. So we need to, yes, there are very brilliant professors on those committees, very brilliant people on those committees, but why do they always fail? Why do they never ever take up? You can see something that has happened in Uhuru Park. Very nice concept, done and dusted, but how accessible is Uhuru Park right now? It's not. So, and even Michuki, actually, I think Michuki is also a private, it's a private area, and Karura you also have to pay to get to Karura. So and the park fees recently got there was a spike of the park fees in Kenya right now, right? So we are making the only open spaces that we have for human to interact very expensive and very the government is not committed to these areas being people accessible. So you wonder, who are they planning this? Why are they spending all this money and yet the people themselves cannot access? So we have to look at these things differently now. And the only way we can look at these things is for us, all of us who are seated here, it's our voices. Our voices is the only thing that will change. There's a bit of fire that has come up with the increase of parking fees, the park fees. The Uhuru Park, there was also some noises about it. But we now have to all have a unified voice for us to be able to sort some of this. They are way beyond the structures. It's just systematic failure. Like, it's something that somewhere somebody decided this thing will never work. But if we really want them to work, they will work. So, and it is collaboration. They have to start with the people first and not the other way around. Not the budgets first and then the people last. It's the people first, find out what is the necessity of the people. And also, we are very busy as urban planners shouting 15-minute cities. But I wonder, 15-minute cities in Nairobi, while I can barely walk from Upper Hill I cannot walk from the Matatu stage to Upper Hill because one, I'm a woman. The safety of these streets, no lighting, the hawkers, you like so much harassment and you're like, no, let me just take a cab. So let's think about safety, accessibility, and security of all our areas, of all our urban areas, so that we are able now to even have people in it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joan. And I just want to jump on that point of accessibility. And if at all there is no access, people will not understand the essence or the benefits of having that connection with nature. And I want to jump to you, Victor. You mentioned that the caliber of people who accept this are high-end, right? And it doesn't mean that also people who are the other caliber, they do not know these benefits. Is it that they do not know, and what can be done so that we ensure that this concept is actually adopted holistically, dependent on who you are, whether you can afford it or not?
Well, like she's mentioned, it's about our voices. From an interior design perspective, I feel like interior designers have a lot of power in their hand to actually push this message across. Because every space you touch and you implement a biophilic element, it's a space that you're changing. So what are you doing about it? From my end, as an interior designer, I push as much. Number one, if you design a commercial space, how many people are going to interact with that space? By the time somebody is interacting with a space and they go back to their own home, there's something they'll want to change. There's something that they'll see that they'll want to improve on, or a material they'll see and they'll want to utilize it. So it's all about our voices. It's all about how we actually design interior spaces, how we actually push the word out for people to know more about interior design. So interior designers, anytime you meet people, talk about biophilic components, talk about the materials, talk about how you can actually improve interior design spaces.
Let me just add.
Yes.
It's a constitutional right. So the moment we all agree to fulfill this constitutional right of safe, it says safe environment. There's something about safe security and something on the constitutional rights. A safe and clean environment. So the low income investors, the guys who are now doing affordable housing, the guys who are going to build in pipeline and all those for the low income and middle income, have you basically just respected that constitutional right of this person? So if we all decide to be sane enough to respect that constitutional right, we'll not have the gap between the high income or the high income and the low income. It will just be a basic constitutional right. So yeah. So if we just adhere to that, then we're okay.
Adhering to what the Constitution says. And I'm very curious, Victor, you're the one who's dealing with the people on ground. Could you give us a scenario whereby maybe you had a client and maybe they had a pushback and they're telling you, ini nini unatuambia, like what are you telling us, yeah? And maybe they're looking at cost, maybe they do not also appreciate that. What did you tell them to convince them? Tell us a success story when you dealt with a client.
I've had quite a pushback, especially for the plants and incorporating natural materials. The pushback that there is, number one, is some of these materials are not readily available. Yeah, you have to actually go in depth to source them. How I try and convince my clients is, personally, I go in depth, source the materials, make them affordable to them and accessible to them, being able to showcase in the design, conceptualization, how it can be used in the context of their spaces. Usually, when you incorporate all these components of biophilic elements within a space, after the project is complete, all clients are usually like, wow. Yeah. But then the biggest driving factor is usually the cost. So as designers, we need to look at ways where we are incorporating the biophilic element with the cost budget, because it's thinking outside the box, basically. So you think about a material, see how it can be incorporated, and make it usable and convince your client in a way that you're not changing their cost, but still you're delivering these elements within the space.
All right, so I want to shift gears a bit, and I want us to understand, how do you measure the impact, or rather the return on nature when it comes to matters biophilic design? So Nuria, I want to kickstart with you. And when you talk about productivity, we talk about wellness, emotional response. So how do you know it's working on the benefits you had shared earlier on?
Great question. So, as I previously explained, it is important to have a pre-survey with the people working or living in those spaces. So we do qualitative and quantitative research on how these people feel, what is the situation, what is the profitability, how people are actually the KPIs depending on the sector. So we have different KPIs depending if it's a hospitality sector. Hospitality sector is measuring more like the dwelling time in for example, in a restaurant, or the dwelling time in a hotel. So these are some of the KPIs. Other KPIs in workspaces are more into the productivity, the coming back to work, which we have big problem after COVID, getting sick or having stress or depression. So we measure all these different factors. And after 6 months, at least 6 months of implementation, we're going to go back to those questions and have a second survey, a final survey, and see if there has been any changes from the pre to the post. I have had a beautiful feedbacks on when I design home spaces of people, families saying, wow, we feel more reconnected to nature. We have less stress. Our kids, I have worked a lot with people, with families, with kids with ADHDs or some other neurodiversities. And don't take me wrong, we're all neurodiverse, but with more acute neurodiversity issues. They have seen an improvement in the way that those kids are performing. So that's an important thing to, as I explained before, to say and to communicate what are the benefits. So if we explain that to our future clients, like, look, this is happening and this has been measured pre and post, that's something that we can showcase to them and showcase to the world to see that this is actually a win-win for people and planet. And this is the way forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Nuria. And I want to ask Ms. Gachoki, the same question. What are the benefits? I know you said there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot that needs to be done right now in our country, but I'm sure there's something that has been done, or maybe there's a trial of what has been done. What are the benefits that we can actually, tangible benefits that we can actually say, and proud as Kenyans, that this is how far we've gone?
So the inclusion of the private sector, I think the private sector is the one that is really trying to achieve the biophilic living. And this is by introduction, or not just rather introduction, of gated communities. And a very good example is Tatu City. And we have all seen what Tatu City has done in terms of providing the needful. So they have been able to even provide the access and the facility, the open spaces that we're looking for. They're all in this Tatu City, and even other gated communities that are well planned nowadays, you see they are all trying to have a park inside, and that's a very positive thing. So the private sector is trying to do it. The government sector is where we have ish. But even if you look at some counties who have county integrated plans, they have also tried to conserve the public land. Some, the ones who still have public land. We have some that don't have public land, but yeah. So in these public lands is where we are seeing they're trying to have these spaces and to provide these spaces and medium of interaction for the communities. So the benefits will be very, as she said all of them. It's the accessibility, it's the connection, it's the relaxation. It's even a medium of just reducing stress and anxiety. And also, it will enhance the urban form. By the urban form, I mean, we're not just looking at, however, I think if you zoom out Nairobi, it always seems very green, but qua ground, I don't know what happens. But if you just zoom it out, you'll see there's so many green areas, and we would want to have more of such, it's, just for the benefit of all of us.
All right.
And so then maybe I'll want to speak about the policies later on.
Yes, in fact, that's my follow-up question. So what's the role of government? You've clearly said the private sector is doing something. So perhaps maybe it's clear to our audience, what are the policies in place, what are the gaps, and what can be done on a government's perspective?
In terms of policies in Kenya, we way ahead of most countries. We have very good paperwork, but it's the implementation that is always a problem. If you just look, the trickle down of the policies will start with the Constitution of Kenya, which outrightly give out the rights. And then we have the Physical and Land Use Planning Act that now stipulates and regulates the urban areas and planning of urban areas. We have the EMCA regulations, that is Environmental Management and Regulation Act. Then we have the Water Act. We have so many acts that are supposed to influence how we design and create biophilic living. And all of them have a very interesting word: sustainable, sustainable, sustainable. If you look at the objectives, sustainable water, sustainable forest, sustainable, But the implementation structure, mostly we do not share there's no sharing. The policymakers and the implementers do not share a common vision. And thus, the problem starts there. So we have the common vision, and then we have financial, of course, every time there's financial. So I would like to say, points ni zile zile. So it's finances, so we have a problem of prioritization of issues. We've not prioritized how we can manage waste in urban areas. Simple waste separation guidelines, which are there on book, but we do not have them on ground. So, and also I think I'll also want to blame us. We are just arrogant people. We decided we have the policies. We are told not to buy plastic bags, but we still go ahead and still purchase plastic bags. So it's culture, shared vision, and the financial prioritization of, we have the finances, just the prioritization of them towards this agenda.
All right, thank you very much. And you've brought a very interesting point on implementation. That's where the gap may be. And I have a question for you, Victor. Do you feel the developers do understand the importance of this on a long-term value? Because those are the people that you interact with. Do you believe, or do you see they do understand the long-term value?
I think developers and consultants who are involved in the built industry, they need to collaborate a lot. Number one, they don't understand that these key components actually require input from all stakeholders. Again, they need to understand the fact that when you incorporate the biophilic elements from the onset of a project, it's easier for other consultants to be able to even have their input inside. I don't think developers understand this, and it's something that now we need to collaborate a lot in the built industry to be able to achieve the biophilic components that we want to achieve.
All right, and I want to jump to Ms. Nuria, because you've been out there globally. Please tell us, are there countries that are getting it right? And maybe we could also borrow for what they're doing, so that we can also borrow back here, right at home in Kenya.
Well, yes, Angela, there are countries which are doing much better. And I've been looking around to have examples as specific cities like Singapore, which is doing it very well. But in terms of countries, I would say that the country of the Netherlands, it's always ahead. They're ahead with many things over there. And they're implementing, the Netherlands and all the northern countries, they're implementing many policies, like, for example, the 330-300 policy. I don't know if you have heard that. It's in urban planning, and it says the following: anyone who has a window should see at least 3 canopies, 3 different trees from their windows. They should have 300 meters of their spaces, of their houses, a public place, a park where they can have some green area. And I know that Joan already addressed this problem. And also the 30% should be 3 canopies. When you look up from above a city, 30% should be green. So policies like that are being implemented in some of the cities. We have also France. Paris is doing a great work. The governor of Paris has developed the last years many of different policies like green rooftops for all new commercial spaces. And so we see that there are many advantages, but there is a lot of work to be done. And the things like creating spaces and conferences like these are great examples to advance this knowledge to real estate developers, to policymakers who are actually have more power to advance this on a major basis, on a major level.
All right, so maybe you can also touch on the indigenous designs and how they shape the modern practice. Maybe you could also touch on that.
Yes, the indigenous. So we already, I've already explained in my first presentation, we forgot to listen to our land. We need to listen to those voices, to nature's voices. And this is easy to say, but there is a big step we have to take, and it's go more into our inner knowledge and understand how we're connected to nature and how our indigenous practices we're doing, and learn from that, learn from those amazing examples that we have all around the globe. I just saw this morning a beautiful video of some old windmills in Iran. And these are still working. They're made out of clay and wood. So amazing technologies that have been using through many decennia, millennia. And we should take a look at that and learn from what our ancestors have brought us here.
All right, thank you very much. I'll jump into you, Joan. What can we learn from the Kenyan and African architecture? Are there lessons maybe from the Swahili? We're talking about Nubian. What can we learn from that?
As it has been emphasized that Africans they've always been biophilic. They'll still be biophilic. I think there was something going around the internet either last year or but one where somebody said that Kenyans love nature. And if you drive through the Kericho, that is the west, is it the west or what? I don't know is it the west of Kenya? Yeah, we're driving through, or like Tok, all those areas, Kericho, the wet areas. You find that this place has very nice green landscapes, well maintained, just like in Muthaiga, for that matter. And we had mud houses. Have we ever asked ourselves why we had mud houses in the first place? Why we had reeds as a roofing for most of the hotter regions? But these guys already knew it. They already knew it, and they knew what they were doing. Those the reeds used to act as coolants, you know. So the rooms were always very cool, and of such things, I think we were discussing about CBC before I came into this panel, and we talked of the way for me I came in when just they were erasing the art and craft, home science, that time. So, and I remember we made dolls from banana, I don't know what they're called. I'll say it in Kikuyu. You go and Google. I'll say it in French. It's called magoto. So, and that was a way of us embracing and remaining in connection with nature. And every time, for example, for me, I'm stressed, I want to find a place out of Nairobi, a BNB that has a lot of greeneries for some reason. These are the millennials. That is why there's a lot of boom on Airbnb businesses that are outside Nairobi, not inside Nairobi. So you see, all of us are now going back to the olden ways. We want to stay herbal. I don't know, I no longer want to take medicine from the chemists. I'm always trying to look for natural ways of eliminating something. So we are being forced to our African culture, nature, and it's it's just coming naturally. You want to learn Kikuyu, you want to learn Kamba, you want to learn Luo. Our children always want to. So, and my point is that as Africa, as Kenya, we have a lot to borrow from. If you've seen, there's a famous architect now doing something in Lodwar. He's using mud. And then we're also forgetting the Middle East. If you look at what the Middle East is doing right now, they're doing, you'll have to help me. Is it called the sand houses, where they're putting sand in sacks and just building and building and building. Yeah, so most of us have gone back to nature. It's just that now we're giving them very nice, posh English names, and it's really nice. And yeah, so that's what I'll have to say.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions in the next few minutes, we'll be jumping into the Q&A session. So Victor, you mentioned that developers do not appreciate, or rather, they do not understand. The issue is that knowledge gap. So what would you tell a young architect who's listening to you right now? What would you tell them?
Study from nature first before implementing it on the ground, because nature has a lot to inspire us. We have curves, we have different materials, we have, you could build up something from a leaf, you could build up something from a hill, and implement it in such a way that actually relates into the interior spaces. One thing I would advise young architects, move away from very box or modular kind of designs, go to the curves, go to your African roots, where we had carvings and we had all these nice shapes within our interior spaces. So those are things that actually, when you implement in an architectural kind of space, or implement it in an interior space, you actually stand out from the rest. That's what I'd advise. Thank you.
All right. So I also want to extend the same question to Ms. Gachoki. What would you tell emerging planners?
I think follow your passion first. You have to do something that you love, and do not fear. I have to say this, Wangui. I was really proud. I was almost like crying when you were giving your speech. And let's keep inspiring the younger generation. Do what you think is right, and do it with all your heart, and God will just do his part. So, and then the other thing, I think what I usually conclude and say is do it for God. Don't do it for you, don't do it for your mother, just do it for God. And the nature will always reward you for what you're doing. You'll never know why you keep getting big clients, but it's because you did something for God. So if you know you're right, just push the legacy. When I started speaking, I was speaking in just small places. I was so agitated about how planners in the cities were running the cities and all that. And when I began speaking, I knew I'll create a lot of enemies along my journey. But right now, they've come back to us again because they want us to put on the structures. So just keep doing what you're doing, believe in yourself, and nature will always reward you.
All right, I like that. Nature will always reward you. And also, just to wrap it up, Miss Nuria, if you could tell us something, and make it like a word of wisdom and help the next generation of biophilic champions, what would you tell them in a nutshell?
Design and style.
In a nutshell, thank you for this question. So I want to add up to the beautiful answers from Joan and Victor. Go out there, observe nature, and connect with yourself. Reconnect with yourself. Find your ikigai. Find your purpose, and see what in that moment, in that specific moment of where you're living, what is needed, and find with those talents you have. Create that ikigai. I think we need all to get to find our own ikigais and put our talents out there and reconnect with nature. So my message to all of you is calm down, go to nature, observe nature, and nature will give you the answer.
Well said, well said. So let's appreciate our panelists for today. So I'd love to open the floor if there are any questions that you have. Maybe in the next 5 minutes, we could have a Q&A session. So if you just have a question, please raise your hand up and a mic will come right to you. So please tell us your name,
Yes.
your organization, and your question, please.
Thank you. My name is John Kithinji. I work for an organization called Revive Consulting Solutions, and we consult in the area of water. That is design of water system for harvesting, treatment, and recycling. I have just about 2 questions to the urban planner. You talked about borehole. I'm very passionate about water, and one of the things that I've realized is that we are encouraging developers to do boreholes. I don't know why, so that every apartment that is coming up, they're doing their own borehole. So what happens is that you find a place like Karen has over 350 boreholes. The water aquifers are going down. The people who did their initial boreholes, they do not have water now. And yet we have opportunity for rainwater harvesting. In my experience, I know that the easiest water to treat is rainwater. Borehole water is actually one of the most difficult water to treat because you have fluoride there, which can only be removed by reverse osmosis, which wastes energy, wastes water, and has other issues. So what is the place of urban planning in encouraging people to get other safer water sources like rainwater? Because like a place like here, I see we have all these roof structures, but I cannot see rain harvesting structures for the same. Then secondly is the issue of land use. Yeah, every developer wants to make use of every space to do grayscape, build a building. So you go to an estate and you find there all these apartments, and then we are doing car parks using cabros everywhere, and you have no place for recharging the water that we are abstracting from the earth, and we have no green space. Is there a way we can encourage in policy to have green spaces, water spaces? And like Mo used to say, when you cut one tree, plant 2. When people are doing borehole, can we encourage them also to recharge the boreholes by creating spaces within the development that does help to recharge the aquifers? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that question.
All right. Thank you. My name is Brian Onen. I'm a green building and sustainability expert. My question is to Victor. You mentioned promoting local artisans in interior design and making a number of things. So countries like Japan already are facing a challenge with preserving the age-long tradition of making furniture and other crafts. Beyond engaging these artisans, what other initiatives do you think should be put in place to preserve the work they do in creating these crafts and so on?
All right, this side, do we have any questions? Going once, going twice. All right, over to you, Ms. Gachoki. You can start with the first question.
A very fun fact, during the first Nairobi master plan, the whole of south of Nairobi, that is South C, South B, and all those were mandated to have water harvesting. If you're trying to live in South C now in the older houses, they have a very big underground tank. And just as I've said, the policies, the boreholes, I think the layman, the problem with developers is they always go to the wrong people for advice. So they will be seated somewhere and they're like, now I need water from my area. Siuchimbe tu borehole. What I say is, the developers just gather somewhere, then they say they have a water issue, and the quickest answer is always, you just do a borehole. And that is the worst advice. And that is why we are having that issue. The other issue is that none of these boreholes are licensed by WARMA. Most of them are not on the WARMA map. So if WARMA puts their map of boreholes in Nairobi here, versus what is on ground, you guys will be shocked. So there's a whole mismatch between policy, regulations, and implementations and what is happening on ground. I'll want to blame the consultants in such projects and also the developer himself. They're not taking time to look at the adverse effects. And for them, it is always a matter of who sinks the deepest borehole, you know, which is so wrong. Because him is like, your borehole, how many meters? We should go deeper. I mean, we need water. So right now we're only thinking of the profits we want to make. That I'm also answering your land use questions. It's more of the profit. So if you tell someone, first of all, I'll start with the 50 by 100. So you've bought a 50 by 100 somewhere. Then you go to county to get an approval. And they tell you to give them 3 meters building line, 4.5 round. And you bought a triangular 50 by 100 because it was next to the road. So they also tell you to give them a truncation. And your architect tells you, boss, we can't do this. He's like, so what do we do? We will sort these guys. And that's the problem we are having. I was laughing when online, she was saying that you need to see 3 canopies. I wonder how many of us will open our windows and see 3 blocks from where we live. So it's an issue of, as I said, ignorance. Because if I knew that a 50 by 100 plot will not give me a proper building that I want, I would have bought a bigger one. And if that surveyor knew that a 50 by 100 will not be beneficial to that person buying it, he wouldn't subdivide that land to 50 by 100. And if the planners on ground knew that these 50 by 100s cannot give maximum economic benefits, they will not allow that subdivision to be there. So it's a circular problem. One problem starts, then it is all and ends up to the developer. Then the developer is blamed for wanting to build 40 floors. You know, so we have to try and solve the issues from where it starts to the end to be able to have a sane city. And the only way we're going to do it is to each of us take an initiative. If you're a county planner, if you're a city planner, if you're a surveyor, county surveyor, just don't do those things. Don't put your signatures on those funny things. Say no and stand no. But the other problem is going to be our politicians. Because that MCA will storm into my office and tell me, why didn't you approve this? So we have a whole circular problem which we have to sit down as all of us and rethink how we want to solve them. I'll leave you to be the next question.
Thank you for your question. I think in the aspect about preserving these crafts, one of the major things that I had a problem with our education system is these crafts were removed. I don't know whether if you went to primary school, you did art and craft. It's no longer there. Maybe if you go to a private school, that's where you get art and craft. So you see, one of the major things that we need to do is reintroduce some of these subjects into our school. As well as, I would also say, things like museums. We need to introduce museums, not just in Nairobi. We also need to introduce museums in Turkana, because there's cultural aspects in Turkana that Turkana people would want to preserve. So these are aspects that we need to look into. The other thing I would speak about, and this is to the private investors, some of these Kenyan artifacts are very good when you sell them out there. So you can invest into communities, package these items very well, and actually spread it across the world so that other cultures can be able to appreciate and know, not just the Maasai shukas that we have in Kenya. We can have a lot more going on. Thank you.
So I want to give maybe one more person. If there's anything burning, I will take just one person. So if you could have the mic. In just a minute, please.
Yes, I have 3 questions. I'm Joseph Githinji. I'm an expert in monitoring and evaluation. I know that we have buildings in West Africa made of earth, which have lasted for generations. But here, if you try to do it, it's not easy to do it. Do we have standards so that we can pick up the local materials so that we can use it in biophilia? Are you working on those standards? Because if you don't, then we'll keep on talking. The second question is, biophilia seems to be spread across sectors, across departments, across ministries, across everything. Where do you think where is the domicile in the government? Because unless you have somewhere specific that you can go, then again it becomes a talk shop for all the ministers, wherever will never make headway. So where do you think it should be domiciled? And how do we advocate so that we can be able to move ahead? The last question may be, do you have a system of monitoring biophilia? Because if I come to a building like this one, to what extent can I say this building is biophilic? So unless you have such a system to monitor and tell me to what extent you have biophilia in whatever you design, then again, it's not easy to move ahead. So I have those three questions.
All right, thank you very much. So I want to start with Victor, if you could answer that last question. To what extent do we go when it comes to matters monitoring biophilia? And then Ms. Gachoki, you'll take the first two questions.
I think there's quite an extent, and this I would relate with the mid-level to the high end, that biophilia is being monitored, especially in terms of the sustainability and the use of the different materials within the interior spaces. We have certification bodies like the LEED certification, we have EDGE certification. These are bodies that unfortunately the client has to apply them privately, but I believe if we can actually implement a system where we monitor these components through the Biophilic or the Kenya Green Biophilic element or chapter in Kenya, where we actually monitor interior spaces and be able to certify these components within the space, I believe we'll achieve a lot.
I think I would want to say first, the policies that are supposed to guide the buildings, materials and building was the NCA, not NCA, the building code, which has been currently revised. However, there was still a gap on how they had fulfilled the sustainability aspect of buildings. And I think the PS has mentioned of a green building policy coming up. As I said, Kenya, we are very good at doing policies. So there will be a policy, if you push, I actually hope you don't push the biophilia to become a policy, because we'll have a very good one. We'll do a very good biophilia policy and how to. But in terms of ministries, I think each ministry needs to have a department that caters for sustainability, if it's even agriculture and stuff like that. And then it has to be a government agenda, not just a government agenda to do campaigns and source funding from the West, but actual implementation of in Kenya. We want to see these things. For example, aside, and you've also asked about the earth, and I think Nuria will also answer on the earth one. There's something about how we were erased. There's something that was erased in us, and we were told that stone houses are the best, and iron sheets, iron sheets, and stone is a mark of your income levels. Meaning, if you had a grass-thatched house, you were poor. If you had an iron sheet house, you were rich. And that has really taken us away from being biophilic and being sustainable. And right now, I'm sure if you tell your 5-year-old child, if you take them to your Ushago and they see a mud house, they'll ask you, what is this house made of? So my point is, we have to bring back the culture first, to appreciate such earth houses. And secondly, in terms of ministries, we shouldn't just push these agendas for funding. Let's push them for our own good, for the future of the next generation. And that has to do a lot with government. And countries that have pushed this agenda, Netherlands, Singapore, countries that have been able to push this agenda is because they are leaders who are willing to support the agenda. And that brings us to 2027 as a future politician. Please put the right boxes. Put the right people in those parliaments. Put the right people in the presidency. Otherwise, we're going to keep discussing these issues. They'll never leave our conference rooms. Even if you go to state departments, they'll never live there unless you have progressive leaders like the PS, Public Works. We have to appreciate him, actually. So otherwise, we'll always be stuck at having challenges. We have solutions, but they don't go anywhere. Nuria?
Thank you. Beautiful said, John. So I would like to add up to that. What I see is that we need a double movement, an up-down movement and a bottom-up movement. So we need all the policies, all the certificates. We need to have biophilic design, biophilia as a subject in every school, in every university, not just for designers, but for all the aspects. As we said, we need to bring more the arts and the crafts because we know how art is influencing on our health and well-being. Also the fact of biophilia, the connection. So if we have that movement from down and from up, creating policies, creating certifications, but also learning and reconnecting those children with what biophilia is, then we're on a good track. I think that we have to look at both ways, not just up here. It also has to be explained to the kids, to the future generations in order to adapt this and to establish this as a norm for the future.
And just to mention, the certifications that he talked about, they're all international certifications. They are things that were done somewhere else. They've come to Kenya and we're supposed to force them to Kenya. And as Kenyans, professionals, we have come up with a Safari, our own, that is called the Safari Index. It's still at the pilot stage. And the biggest challenge when you're doing these certifications, because they have not been localized, you'll always struggle to get our local materials into these certifications. So we need to encourage more the universities, collaborations between us and the universities that we have locally, research, and come up with local tools that cater for our local materials. Yeah.
Right, so we have come to the end of our first panel. So one thing is very clear is that biophilic design is not just a nice to have, it's a must to have. So let's demand more from our spaces. Let's bring back the African heritage and our culture. Let's design like life depends on it. And also, let's move from policies to implementation. And also, what has just been echoed just right now is let's bring it back to our curriculum and let's educate the future generation. And also, let us collaborate and ensure our spaces are healthy for us. So thank you to our incredible panelists. That's Miss Nuria, Miss Joan, and Victor. Thank you so much for this amazing, insightful panel that you have given us. So let's keep building. Let's keep building beautifully, boldly, and biophilically. Thank you.